It began with a handshake. At least, that's what the Galactic Assembly assumed it was. The human called it a handshake. The 12-limbed ambassador from Tau Cretus V called it a mutual limb grappling ritual. Others just watched, silently wondering if they should sanitize their appendages afterward. Ambassador Mercer, said High Chair Orln of the Zavarki, brushing slime from his crystalline robes. We welcome Earth to the diplomatic folds of the United Galactic Assembly. May your people's unusually volatile past be behind you. Eli Mercer smiled. It was a small thing, a curving of lips. On Earth, it meant charm, warmth, approachability. In several cultures across the galaxy, it triggered instinctive fear. Teeth were generally not meant to be displayed unless one intended to use them. Thank you for your gracious welcome, Chair Orln, Eli replied, his voice velvet smooth, the smile unwavering. We're honored to bring the spirit of diplomacy and peace from Earth to the stars. He radiated gentility. A man in his mid-30s, clean-cut, dressed in a midnight blue suit that practically purred harmless professional. No visible weapons. No battle scars. Not a trace of the ancient warrior castes or predator rituals that most spacefaring civilizations wore like ancestry tattoos. He offered small talk and aged whiskey to his alien hosts. Even the bottle was labeled in a cursive script, Kentucky's best, the peaceful burn, which many aliens assumed was ceremonial. The assembly hall was vast, tiered, alive with the murmur of translators and flickering biolights. Species from every known quadrant watched the human, with what they thought was detached curiosity. In truth, the room buzzed with whispered analyses, scent-based codes, and encrypted telepathic threads. One of the delegates, a sleek and spined Cathar warrior prince, watched Eli closely, mandibles twitching in a pattern that translated loosely as, "Something's off." Beside him, the gelatinous ambassador Vul of the Polari drifted idly in their nutrient tank, uninterested. "They are soft twirlders," Vul gurgled dismissively. "What could they possibly contribute but confusion and bad cuisine?" Across the chamber, the avian delegate Tackhook tapped a claw nervously. The young Yvonne ambassador had read Earth's submitted cultural histories. There was something inconsistent about it. Their violent past wasn't a past at all, it was suspiciously recent. The last global war had ended a mere 2 centuries ago. A blink in galactic terms. Tackhook leaned toward the alien beside him and whispered, "Why do they call their war tools peacekeepers?" The only response was a nervous flutter of feathers. Later, at the welcome banquet, Eli made the rounds. He sipped odd-colored drinks, exchanged pleasantries, and made gentle jokes that passed through the translators like wind through reeds. Yet each phrase seemed to carry a second edge, buried beneath the laughter. To the tentacled diplomat from Skarn, "Our cuisine is certainly adventurous. We once deep-fried butter at a state fair." To the ancient Zalani priest mind, "We're fascinated by time, always trying to save it, spend it, kill it." To the militant Grothak ambassador, "On Earth, we resolve most disputes with discussion, and if that fails, we get creative." Each joke left its recipient chuckling or blinking in confusion. No one was quite sure whether the human was being witty or issuing veiled threats. But no one asked. Politeness, after all, was the official tongue of diplomacy. An alien server floated by, offering crystal canapes. Eli declined politely. "Thank you, but I already ate. Never negotiate on an empty stomach." "You have the look of prey," said Cathar suddenly, approaching with a glass of amber liquid and no patience for subtlety. Eli turned. The warrior towered over him, armored scales glinting, ceremonial blade visible at his side. He was built for dominance, born into a culture where power was worn like perfume. Eli, with his unassuming frame and calm tone, simply looked up at him and smiled. "Funny. We've been told that before. Usually by species we don't hear from again." Cathar's mandibles clicked. "A threat?" "An observation," Eli replied. "You'd be amazed how often we're underestimated. That's why we're such good diplomats. We have so much practice convincing people not to fight us." "Your history suggests the opposite," Cathar growled. "You solved your own conflicts with fire and steel." "Exactly," Eli said. Which is why we now prefer words. They leave fewer craters. That night, as the stars arched over the diplomatic spire, and the last of the drinks were drained, Ambassador Vool sloshed their way into their private suite and dictated a quick summary back to their homeworld. Humans appear non-threatening, mildly eccentric, possibly intoxicated, poor sense of fashion, unlikely to destabilize the current balance. Recommend cultural containment and low-tier tech sharing. Suggest blocking their access to Council military archives due to their historical obsession with kinetic solutions. Meanwhile, in a small, unlisted human vessel parked just outside diplomatic orbit, Commander Mila Trent leaned back from her console and stared at the decrypted alien reports. Still think sending Eli was the right call? She asked. Captain Song folded his arms. He's perfect. They laugh when he talks. They never look when he listens. That's how you win without firing a shot. Trent raised an eyebrow. You don't think they'll catch on? Song smiled. They never do. Back in the Council's grand library, Ambassador Eli stood alone between towering shelves of ancient treaties and extinct languages. He traced his finger along the spine of a thick, untranslated tome. His other hand opened a small device disguised as a pen, which silently scanned and uploaded the entire archive in less than 10 seconds. He didn't take anything. Not visibly. But he left with knowledge. And knowledge, to a species like his, was always the first step in either trade negotiations or conquest. Days passed. The humans settled into their diplomatic role. They hosted cultural exhibitions. Shared Earth music. They taught aliens how to make coffee and pancakes and subtle insults wrapped in smiles. Bless your heart, Eli said once to the condescending minister of Regali, who had accused humans of being emotionally unstable pack primates. The translator rendered it as, "May you prosper despite your flaws," which only added to the confusion. More and more, the assembly began to see humanity as quirky, unpredictable, but ultimately harmless. It was a mistake. One afternoon, a delegate from the outer spiral colonies requested a simple technical exchange with Earth. A routine gesture. The request was denied. "We apologize," Eli said gently. "But that data is classified." The delegate pressed. Why would a diplomatic species classify planetary scanner frequencies? Eli just smiled. Habit. Later that week, an incident occurred. A minor one, technically. A cargo vessel from the insectoid Zerv attempted to dock at a human research outpost without proper clearance. The Zerv captain claimed it was a navigational error. The human outpost responded by disabling the ship's engines with a precision EMP pulse, remotely locking its doors, and broadcasting a public warning. Please respect Terran borders. Our protocols may appear excessive, but they are highly automated. No lives were lost. No weapons fired. But the Zerv ambassador didn't sleep for 3 rotations. Ambassador Eli personally delivered a box of chocolates and a handwritten apology. The chocolates were poisoned. Not lethally, just enough to induce hallucinogenic visions of being hunted across an endless jungle by something unseen and laughing. Eli assured them it was an honest packaging mix-up. When asked why the chocolates had been labeled Trial Batch, Psychological Warfare Division, he smiled and said, "Our packaging team gets creative sometimes." By now, several species were starting to talk. The Yvonne ambassador called an emergency meeting of younger allied races. "We've made a mistake," Tackhook squawked, feathers flaring in alarm. "We thought humans were naive. That they were funny. They're terrifying." "You're overreacting," said the plenary delegate, waving a translucent tendril. "They've been polite the entire time." "That's the problem," Tackhook shrieked. "They've only been polite. Even when we offended them. Even when we insulted their culture. They never got angry." The room fell silent. No predator stays that calm unless it's already decided what to do with you. Meanwhile, Eli sat on a bench overlooking the artificial lake near the diplomatic gardens, feeding alien ducks with his gloved hands. The ducks were a gift from Earth, genetically modified to survive in oxygen-nitrogen atmospheres, and aggressively territorial toward unfamiliar pheromones. He watched one chase a diplomat from Varn across the water's edge, then offered it another breadcrumb. A voice buzzed from his earpiece. "They're starting to suspect." Eli didn't look up. "Good. Let them." He rose, brushed off his suit, and walked back toward the council tower, pausing only once to adjust his tie. Inside, an alien child pointed up at him and said, "Mom, why does the human keep smiling like that?" Her mother pulled her close. "Because sometimes, even in the farthest reaches of the galaxy, the most dangerous animal is the one that smiles before it bites." The ambush began with flowers. Specifically, a bouquet of blood-red thorn blossoms, native to Krozax Prime, fragrant, toxic to humans, and traditionally offered as a sign of peace. The human delegation accepted them with grace. Ambassador Eli Mercer inhaled deeply, winced politely, and passed them to an aide wearing full hazard filtration. He even complimented the floral arrangement. The Krozax delegation smiled, if you could call it that. Their grins were all jagged bone and exoskeletal plates shifting like puzzle traps. "May this offering symbolize our mutual trust," said Overclaw Varthak, his voice a low buzz filtered through a translator embedded in his thorax. Eli bowed just enough to be respectful, but not so much as to suggest submission. "And may our friendship bloom with the same intensity." To most present, it was a formal diplomatic exchange. To the Krozax, it was the beginning of a targeted kidnapping. The banquet was held in a neutral station above a binary system. Neutral in name only. The host species, the Darwin, were notoriously corrupt and more than willing to look the other way for the right sum of credits or promised territory. The Krozax planned to extract Eli, interrogate him, and return him after sufficiently re-educating him on Earth's proper place in the galactic hierarchy. He was too calm, too collected. His jokes too sharp, and his people too quiet. They needed to know what Earth was hiding. When the lights flickered, just once, like a nervous blink, no one thought much of it. But Eli knew. His expression didn't change. He reached for his glass of Terran white wine and swirled it idly. A moment later, two Krozax security officers flanked him with stiff politeness and extended their claws. "Ambassador Mercer, there has been a matter of protocol regarding your shuttle. We require your assistance to clarify the authorization codes." Eli nodded. "Of course. Shall we take the scenic route?" They didn't answer. He went with them anyway. The corridor was empty and hushed. The hum of the ship's systems felt quieter than usual. Too quiet. Eli walked at a leisurely pace, his hands clasped behind his back, as though he were touring a museum instead of being marched toward a holding chamber. As they reached a security bulkhead, one of the guards gestured toward a recessed panel. "Step inside. This is for your safety." "Of course," Eli said again. Then he moved. To the Krozax, it was almost too fast to follow. One moment, the human ambassador was standing politely. The next, he had pivoted on his heel, twisted under the nearest guard's outstretched arm, and drove a small, flat object into the creature's thoracic joint. It pulsed once, an EMP pulse tuned to binaural mesh. The guard spasmed, fell twitching. The second guard roared and lunged, but Eli sidestepped, drew a thin metallic pen from his inner pocket, and jabbed it into the Krozax's eye cluster. It exploded with a faint pop and a hiss of chemical discharge. The creature crumpled. Eli adjusted his cuffs. Two Terran security officers appeared at the end of the corridor, dressed in the same formal attire, holding what looked like briefcases. They opened them. Inside were compact rifles and a modular drone kit. Eli offered them a wry smile. "Apologies for the delay. Shall we proceed with the clarification?" 10 minutes later, the station was on fire. Not entirely, just enough to send a message. A Krozax shuttle exploded on the upper ring. Another was disabled by a drone that latched onto its engine core and whispered a virus into its system. The Krozax command center was infiltrated and emptied, without a single lethal casualty. At the heart of it all, Eli stood on the viewing deck as fire suppression systems sprayed blue foam across a burning shuttle bay. His suit had a scorch mark on the lapel. He looked vaguely disappointed. Commander Mila Trent's voice crackled in his earpiece. "Extraction vector confirmed. Would you like a less dramatic exit next time? I said scenic, not cinematic, Eli murmured. But I'll admit, it has a certain style. Casualties? None. On our side. One Crozax tried to bite me. Regrettable decision. Trent chuckled. We've already received 3 formal apologies and a very confused fruit basket. Tell them I prefer pears, Eli said, and cut the line. Later that evening, the Galactic net exploded. Surveillance footage leaked, of course. Someone always leaked it. It showed Eli's quiet walk, the sudden takedown, and the coordinated human response. It showed humans smiling, always smiling, as they dismantled an ambush that should have overwhelmed them. It was replayed 1 billion times across 1,000 worlds. Most clips ended with Eli sipping tea beside a broken console, legs crossed, eyes on the stars. Speculation ignited like solar flare storms. The diplomatic subreddit of the Galnet began with, "Why do humans fight like they're making a point?" Replies flooded in. Did anyone else notice how he used the wine glass as a mirror before moving? That's not diplomacy. That's predatory psychology 101. They're smiling while they kill. That's not normal. I think that's the point. In the aftermath, the United Galactic Assembly issued a formal rebuke against unnecessary violence during diplomatic engagements. Earth's response was polite, brief, and profoundly unsettling. We are disappointed that our peaceful intentions were met with treachery. Nonetheless, we remain committed to diplomacy, preferably with species less inclined to mistake smiles for weakness. Signed, Ambassador Eli Mercer. A new term began circulating among galactic analysts, smile tactics, defined as the human practice of using politeness as camouflage for strategic escalation. Within 2 cycles, 14 species filed inquiries about Earth's military history. 9 withdrew those inquiries mid-investigation. Inside the assembly itself, Eli was still being Eli. He brought pastries to the council session the following week. Real Earth pastries, not replicated, not synthesized. They had cinnamon, sugar, and the unsettling texture of handmade sincerity. He placed them on the communal table with the note, "For a sweeter future." Several delegates refused to touch them. Others, more curious or hungrier than cautious, ate them and quietly asked their aides to schedule cultural sensitivity training. Ambassador Vul of the Polari watched Eli from across the chamber, rippling with something uncomfortably close to anxiety. "He shouldn't be that calm," Vul muttered into a private channel. Their species was nearly extinct 12 times by their own hands. They warred for water, air, even ideology. And now they smile like it never happened. "They've learned restraint," offered Counselor Sharin of the Tarathi. "No," Vul said. "They've learned patience." That night, in a secure orbit over Earth's embassy compound, Kathar of the Dominion met with 2 other high-ranking military envoys. They shared no drinks, no pleasantries, just hard data and harder realizations. "They set traps," one said. "They knew the Crozax would try something," another added. Kathar flexed his clawed hand. "They made themselves vulnerable to invite the attack, then demonstrated their strength. That's not diplomacy. That's bait." "They're predators," Kathar said grimly. "But worse. They've made it elegant." Back on Earth, the Central Strategic Assembly, a body unknown to most of the galaxy, reviewed the footage. "Phase 2 is live," said Admiral Shin. "The Council's mood is shifting." "They think we're unstable," another officer offered. "They think we're efficient," said Eli, watching the screen. "Efficient scares them more." His voice was calm, thoughtful. Not a hint of malice. "We gave them every chance," he continued. "Politeness. Trade. Wine. We even brought them homemade muffins. Do we escalate?" "No," Eli said. "We wait. Let them escalate again. They will." And they did. 1 cycle later, a small but arrogant species, the Malrun, tested Earth's resolve. They disabled a human communication relay near the Quora expanse. Officially, it was an accidental scan burst. Unofficially, it was a provocation. Earth's response came in the form of a survey team. Not a fleet. Not a war cry. A simple geological research team, escorted by an unarmed vessel with a curious name, the Enlightenment. The team landed. The Malrun laughed. Within 24 hours, their planetary infrastructure collapsed. Not exploded, collapsed. Quietly, cleanly, perfectly. Tunnels destabilized. Power grids inverted. Agricultural domes shut down. By the time the Malrun realized what was happening, they were locked in their own capital, sealed by systems they didn't even know had been compromised. And still, not a single human weapon had fired. Eli addressed the Galactic Assembly via hologram. "My apologies," he said. "We were conducting standard tectonic stress testing. Our findings suggest Malrun Prime is poorly structured." There was a long silence. One delegate finally asked, "Was this retaliation?" Eli's brow furrowed. "Retaliation? No. We were invited. Weren't we?" He cut the feed before they could respond. Behind him, Commander Trent leaned against the console, arms crossed. "That was cold." "I was trying to be warm," Eli said. "They just don't understand the dialect." "You think they'll escalate again?" "They can't help themselves. We scare them. And scared people either run or poke the thing that frightens them." Trent sighed. "Which are we hoping for?" Eli's smile returned. Slow, practiced, and never reaching his eyes. "Doesn't matter. Both paths lead to the same place." That night, the assembly reconvened in emergency session. Ambassador Vul refused to attend. Kadar spoke only in metaphors. Takhuk, once bright and eager, now wore ceremonial war feathers and avoided eye contact with the humans. And Eli, as always, sat in the center, pouring tea for anyone brave enough to sit beside him. One delegate finally did. A slender, ancient being from the Oran Accord. "Wise. Patient. Cautious. You orchestrated this," they said. "All of it." Eli raised his cup. "I facilitated. The orchestration was mutual." "You want war?" "No," Eli said softly. "We want respect." Unfortunately, the two are often confused. He sipped his tea. "And when diplomacy fails," he added, "we're very good at Plan B." They thought it was over. After the incident with the Malrun, after the sabotage cloaked in scientific formality, a wave of nervous stillness washed over the Galactic Assembly. No one made direct accusations. That wasn't the way of diplomacy. But the quiet space between sessions buzzed with suspicion, and Eli Mercer, as always, wore that disarming smile like a velvet glove over a gauntlet. Ambassadors avoided eye contact. A few requested reassignment to other sectors. Others began revising contingency plans in secret. Still, there was no official conflict. No war declarations. Just unease. Just the knowledge that humans had answered an insult not with fleets or missiles, but with an erosion of infrastructure so elegant it looked like an accident. It was terrifying. It was art. But the galaxy kept turning. Trade resumed. Councils reconvened. By unspoken agreement, the humans were left alone. Not embraced, not opposed. Contained. That's when the Krozak's border began to unravel. At first, it looked like a minor mutiny. Local governors refusing central orders, small defense platforms going dark. Then it spread. Mining worlds stopped sending resources. Supply routes vanished. When a Krozak's patrol ship responded, it found the colony's spaceport stripped to frame, engines removed, comms burned out. Not destroyed, harvested. Panic was whispered, then spoken, then broadcast. Krozak's territory was fracturing from the inside. The assembly called an emergency intelligence session. Eli attended, though he was never formally invited. No one had the nerve to stop him. He entered quietly, adjusted his cufflinks, and took a seat like a man at a poetry reading. The Krozak's ambassador stood across from him, trembling with repressed fury. "You did this," he snarled. "You destabilized our colonies." Eli blinked slowly. "I've never even been to your colonies." "You sent operatives. We sent pamphlets. About voting rights. Local governance. Self-determination. He paused. Your citizens responded with surprising enthusiasm. You sowed rebellion. Eli's voice didn't rise. We introduced literacy. What they did with it wasn't our fault. Several ambassadors exchanged looks. The ancient ones among them, those who remembered empires rising and falling like tides, watched Eli with a quiet, reluctant awe. The Crozaks slammed a clawed fist on the table. If you wanted war. We don't, Eli interrupted. We don't want war. You wouldn't survive it. The silence that followed was not empty. It was charged. Every species in the chamber felt it, a gravitational shift in the conversation, in the rules. Cathar, usually brash, now leaned forward with dangerous stillness. Then what do you want, human? Eli exhaled through his nose. What all species want. Security. Resources. Influence. And respect. You're predators. You hide it behind smiles and slogans, but you're apex creatures. Wrong, Eli said. We're collaborative apex creatures. We figured out how to use teeth without biting, until someone forgets we have them. Afterward, when the council recessed, Eli walked through the hallways as if the confrontation had never happened. A young plenary aide trailed him, wide-eyed and trembling. Sir, may I ask, what was the Crozaks colony called? Eli turned, studying her. Caller's Reach. Why? It used to be heavily fortified. They were known for defensive rigidity. They were also known, Eli said, for suppressing 3 generations of native Moonborns. We made contact. Gave them a choice. Of what? Change. Or continuity. And they chose change? No, Eli said. They chose us. Far from the diplomatic halls, on the surface of Caller's Reach, a new government convened in a repurposed Crozaks war room. The flag outside was not Earth's, but the advisors inside wore Earth-designed visors, used Earth-taught strategies, and implemented Earth-born systems of governance. Every one of them smiled when interviewed. The broadcast was a masterpiece of soft power. The reporter asked, "Are you Earth's puppet state?" The new prime governor replied, "No. We're Earth's student." 1 week later, the Malrun launched a countermeasure. Still smarting from their previous humiliation, they attempted to seize an Earth-aligned station in the Perigi Drift. Officially, it was a preemptive stabilization mission. Unofficially, it was desperation dressed as bravado. They never made it past the asteroid belt. The station's auto-defense grid, completely civilian in appearance, activated a field of micro-drones that shredded incoming vessels with precision disassembly. No explosions. No fire. Just ships delicately unmade in space. By the time backup arrived, all Malrun soldiers had been disarmed, tagged, and wrapped in thermal blankets with polite note cards that read, "Please wait patiently. You are being redirected to a more constructive opportunity." The assembly didn't call a session this time. They didn't have to. Eli received invitations. Private ones. From species once skeptical, now curious. They wanted to learn how Earth had flipped colonies without firing a shot. How they had dismantled fleets without conflict. How their ambassador moved like a soft-spoken shadow from battlefield to boardroom. The Yvani, long diplomatic traditionalists, sent their high speaker to Earth for observation. He returned within a week, pale and glassy-eyed. "They study us," he said. "Not just militaries. People. Habits. Flaws. Psychology. They know us better than we know ourselves." And yet, no official declaration of war had passed between Earth and anyone. Not one. Which raised a question that echoed through the Galactic network. If this wasn't war, what was it? Inside Earth's embassy, Commander Mila Trent watched feeds from half a dozen conflict zones. Each map pulsed with movement, alliances redrawn, treaties dissolved, populations pivoting toward Terran influence. "Should we start calling this a war?" she asked Eli. He sipped his coffee, eyes on a blinking diplomatic readout. "Wars imply we're fighting. We're just better at convincing." She nodded. "We're building an empire." He didn't deny it. You should prepare for pushback, she added. Even the ancient races are nervous. They should be. We built our civilization on unstable politics and aggressive marketing. We're the only species that monetized apocalypse scenarios for fun. Do they think we were trying to be normal? She almost smiled. You're enjoying this. No, Eli said. But I am deeply satisfied. In a distant system, the Malrun convened a secret summit of anti-Terran forces. Old enemies sat beside each other, bound by mutual dread. The Crozaks, the Regali, even fragments of the fractured Sindhi Accord. They called it the Containment Pact. Their goal was simple: stop Earth. Not through combat, that had failed, but through public pressure, political sanctions, unified resistance. It lasted 4 days. On the 5th, their location was broadcast to every major network: coordinates, attendees, agenda. No one ever claimed the leak. Within hours, local populaces protested outside their embassies. Not in support of Earth, in support of change. They demanded access to human technologies, education, infrastructure, culture. One protest sign read, "If they're monsters, at least they're competent ones." Another simply said, "They gave us clean water." The pact dissolved that evening. Eli never addressed the leak, never referenced the summit. But the next day, he offered free translation software to all member worlds, as a gesture of goodwill. By now, several delegates were referring to humans not as diplomats, but as infiltrators with charm. The name stuck. One Tarathi elder, long believed to be near psychic, wrote in a journal, "They hide their fangs behind fables, tell bedtime stories while resetting power grids, smile as they pull empires apart with string and narrative. They are not at war. They are at work." Back on Kallar's Reach, the new human-aligned government officially requested Terran peacekeeper advisors. Not soldiers, advisors. Trained in conflict resolution, infrastructure planning, and crowd management. The galaxy gasped. Earth's response was warm, direct, and chilling in its simplicity. "Of course. We'd be happy to help." The request passed. The advisors arrived. 10,000 of them. Each carried a tablet, a badge, and a smile. None were armed. None needed to be. Eli watched from orbit, hands folded behind his back, as the first training drills began. Colonists assembled in formation, learning Terran procedures, memorizing evacuation strategies, internalizing defense maneuvers that had once been honed in the fires of Earth's own self-inflicted chaos. "You know they'll come for us eventually," Trent said beside him. "I'm counting on it. They'll accuse us of conquest. No. They'll accuse us of competence. That's worse." She stared at him. "This isn't just diplomacy anymore." Eli's expression didn't change. It never was. At that moment, in a shadowed corner of the galaxy, a species the Assembly hadn't heard from in centuries stirred. They watched the rise of humanity not with fear, but with recognition. Because they had seen this before. Once. Long ago. And it had ended with worlds burning. The invitation arrived as a gesture of desperation disguised as diplomacy. The Galactic Assembly, under pressure from its own fracturing coalitions, summoned Earth to a summit on Corvex Prime, the central neutral world, seat of law, tradition, and every committee that ever failed to prevent a war. This time, the council chambers were ringed with armed guards from 5 different species, each pretending they were there for ceremony. Eli Mercer arrived alone. He stepped from his shuttle wearing a tailored gray suit that blended perfectly into the colorless grandeur of the Great Hall. He carried no briefcase, no datapad, no visible device. Just himself. Just that damn smile. A Crozak's general watched him from across the plaza. "Where is his escort?" "He doesn't need one," murmured the Yvonne ambassador. The others turned. "He's not here to negotiate," she added. "He's here to finish what he started." Inside, the council chamber was already full. Over 200 representatives sat in a circular amphitheater. No one smiled. The room felt colder than the stone it was built from. Eli walked to the center, slowly, as if on a casual stroll through a museum. High Chair Orln of the Zavarki spoke first. His voice echoed off the dome above. Ambassador Mercer, this gathering has been convened to discuss what your people call influence. Others call it infiltration. Eli tilted his head. I wasn't aware we had infiltrated anyone. Everything we've done has been in the open. You just didn't look closely. A Regali delegate hissed. You are colonizing without ships. A compliment, Eli replied. But let's be precise. We offer structure, technology, improvement. They come to us. We don't invade. We upgrade. You destabilized entire sectors. We optimized underperforming ones. You collapsed regimes. We offered better ones. You act like this is mercy. It is, Eli said. The silence that followed was thick, pulsing. A few delegates scribbled notes. Others stared at him like he was something behind glass, something fascinating, something they'd only recently realized could bite. Ambassador, began Chair Orln again. Do you deny Earth is building a covert empire? Eli blinked, slowly. I don't deny anything. But I reject your premise. Empires conquer for domination. We don't want to rule you. We want to be useful. You find that more dangerous. And what if we say no? Asked the Tarathi elder. Eli turned to face him directly. Then we will leave you alone, he said. We'll watch as you decline, as your own citizens beg us to return. We'll send apologies and fruit baskets. And someday, when your infrastructure collapses and your allies abandon you, we'll come back. With pamphlets. Smiling. There it was. Not a threat. A certainty. The truth hung in the air like a scent of ozone before lightning. You're parasites, muttered a voice. Eli smiled wider. No. Parasites take without giving. We give. It's just that our gifts are hard to return. Then the twist arrived. Orln stood. This session is not just diplomatic. It is judicial. Eli didn't move. You are hereby declared a hostile agent of destabilization. You are to be detained and interrogated for subversion of galactic law. Effective immediately. Guards moved. From every entrance. Eli remained where he was, unflinching, as power-armored troops closed in with precision that screamed premeditation. Then, he raised a single hand. Before you continue, he said, you should know something. The guards froze. Not from the words, but the tone. Something cold beneath the charm. Something ancient. You've been wondering, Eli continued, why Earth sends diplomats instead of generals. Why we smile while you insult us. Why we take notes and pour tea while you posture and threaten. No one breathed. It's because we don't come to fight. We come to prepare. From beneath his sleeve, he tapped a hidden switch. Across the chamber, several delegates flinched. Not at the action. At the immediate response, every guard's weapon powered down. Systems shut down. Helmets went dark. A virus, injected into the assembly's security net, dormant until now. Your mistake, Eli said, was assuming Earth's power lies in its weapons. Every screen in the room lit up, showing footage from across the galaxy. Human-aligned colonies functioning seamlessly, infrastructure expanding, populations thriving. At each of them stood a single figure in a gray suit, smiling, clipboard in hand. We don't need fleets, Eli said. We embed. We adapt. We analyze. And when the time comes, we decide. You're bluffing, snapped a delegate. No, said a quiet voice from the gallery. It was Takhuk, the Ivani. I've seen their training centers. Their logistics cores. The way they teach children politics before they learn arithmetic. I thought they were just efficient. I was wrong. They're predatory architects. Eli turned, giving a small bow. Takhuk trembled but didn't stop. They're not conquering us. They're replacing us. Gasps. Movement. Whispers. Enough, Orln shouted. This is madness. Then, the skies broke open. Literally. Above Corvex Prime, the stars shifted. It wasn't a fleet. No warships, no weapons visible. Just hundreds of vessels, all shaped like trade barges, research outposts, supply hubs. But they all bore the Earth sigil. Each one connected to the planetary grid within seconds. Not attacking. Integrating. A voice echoed through the chambers. This is Commander Mila Trent. Your planetary systems are now under Terran humanitarian protection. Please remain seated. The assembly descended into chaos. Shouting. Moving. Holograms flickering. Eli remained still. You wanted war, he said softly. You assumed that's how we fight. That's why you lost before the first shot. You dare. I warned you, Eli said. We are collaborative predators. The apex doesn't roar. It waits. He looked up at the dome. I was never a diplomat. One delegate stared at him. Then what are you? Eli smiled. A rehearsal. Outside, the world flickered as Terran systems activated. No bombs. No martial law. Just optimization. Power rerouted. Corruption logs uploaded. Hidden files exposed. Entire bureaucracies evaporated under the weight of their own data. The war they'd feared had already happened. In the data. In the infrastructure. In every power relay the humans had touched under the guise of peace. It hadn't been invasion. It had been inevitability. Back inside, Oron slumped into his seat. You were always going to do this. Eli finally showed something resembling pity. No. We hoped we wouldn't have to. He turned toward the exit. You called us here to judge us. You should have judged yourselves. At the doorway he paused, then glanced back one final time. We tried tea. You chose teeth. Later, as Corvex Prime recalibrated under Terran oversight, the assembly dissolved. Not officially. Just practically. Delegates returned to their worlds to find new alliances forming, citizens asking hard questions, economies shifting toward Earth-centric models. Some resisted. Briefly. Most adapted. Eli stood on a balcony overlooking the new central plaza. Smaller, simpler, cleaner. No towering statues. Just a single plaque with a quote etched in clean lines. Politeness is the camouflage of apex creatures. Below, Terran advisors walked with local officials, quietly rebuilding, retraining, reinforcing. Commander Trent joined him. It's done. No, Eli said. It's started. She looked at him. You think they'll ever forgive us? They don't need to, he said. They just need to function. He turned, looking out at the stars. One day, they'll believe they chose this. And when they don't? Eli smiled. Not sharp. Not smug. Just calm. Then we'll remind them how much worse it was before we arrived. On the far edge of the galaxy, the ancient race that had watched it unfold finally spoke. They were never diplomats. No. They were seeds. And the galaxy, wide-eyed and still unsure whether it had been saved or subjugated, finally understood. This is why you don't invite apex predators to tea.